Good evening. My name is Brent Rosen, and I'm an attorney with Baker Donaldson, but I'm not here tonight to talk about healthcare licensing.
And I'm Caroline Neighbors Rosen, and I'm the sponsorship director and marketing director for Mountain Valley Spring Water. But I'm not here tonight to talk about water.
We're the co-founders of EDZ Montgomery and Made Paper. We're also here to talk about alternative talent development.
So when we started this project, when we started going through it, we'd been working on it for about 3 or 4 hours. And finally, in that nagging look only a wife can give her husband, I looked to Brent and I said, we need to define what is alternative talent development.
And interestingly, when Caroline said that, I realized we'd been for 5 hours working on a project with entirely different definitions of alternative talent development in mind. I thought we were talking about how to develop regular talent in an alternative way.
And I thought we were talking about alternative talent development.
What's funny is that even though we were working on the same project from entirely different perspectives for hours, there was a lot of commonalities because the conditions that you need for alternative talent development are the same conditions you need to develop alternative talent. And the through line of it all is curiosity.
That's right. What we came to learn is if you aren't curious, you're not going to get better, and you're not going to grow good talent, alternative or not.
In the question of talent, where does talent go? And we decided there are really two sorts of places. There's talent magnets and talent vacuums. Nashville is a current talent magnet. Right now, Nashville is reaching out across the Southeast, pulling talented people in because of its booming economy and numerous opportunities for development. Then you have places like Montgomery. For years, Montgomery has bled some of its best talent to those magnets. Cities like Atlanta and Nashville and Birmingham regularly take some of Montgomery's best and brightest. But we'll talk more about that in a second. Because I was in Nashville not too long ago having lunch with a colleague, and he said, "What's it like to live in Montgomery?" And I said, there's something that I've noticed, and it's a little bit strange. I know a lot of people in their 30s and a lot of people in their 60s, but there's almost like a missing generation of people in their 40s and 50s that I never see. And he had this look on his face, almost an aha moment, and said, it's weird that you say that, because I have so many friends from Jackson, Mississippi and Montgomery, Alabama. And I've never thought, what is it like in the places where they left? And Nashville's boom and gains are really the losses of places like Memphis and Jackson and Montgomery, and even smaller places where it's even harder to retain your talent, like Selma or Anniston or Union Springs.
And so here's the hard, honest truth. Montgomery hit rock bottom. There was no room for talent, and there was a rigid social structure. It wasn't a place where curiosity or doing things differently was appreciated. But here's the good news. We're on our way up.
And talent gaps create opportunity. If you want to get involved with a not-for-profit, or want to get involved with a company, or serve on a board, there isn't some 40-year-old sitting in that seat. If you're an entrepreneur, come to Montgomery. Rents are low. There's abandoned buildings everywhere you can take over. Costs of business are basically nothing. Startup costs don't exist. And if you fail small, and no one will likely know about it. And one of the best things about Montgomery is that you don't have to wait your turn because there really isn't anyone in line ahead of you.
So what we're here tonight to talk about even more in depth is the union of this new talent that started to come into Montgomery. In addition with that talent that has been here, and there are quite a few of you, and I see you in the crowd tonight, that have been fighting all along to make the new Montgomery.
And in the new Montgomery, artists sit in with musicians, chefs party with entrepreneurs, writers can't help but meet interesting subjects every time they leave their house. And it's the new Montgomery that's provided us with an opportunity to follow our passion and co-found Made Paper and EDZ Montgomery.
So as David was telling you earlier, I work for Mountain Valley Spring Water, and I can actually live anywhere in the U.S. I also have the luxury of working at some of the best food events you can go to. And I've met chefs and we're friends, and owners of restaurants and we're friends. So after we'd been settled here for about 6 months, I told them I'm staying in Montgomery and I love it. This is what I heard. Atlanta can't wait to have you in 6 months. We're here for you. Music City, you're gonna love Nashville. Austin's a great spot, and please come home to New Orleans. And I said, I feel something different here. We both lived in New Orleans through Katrina. And it's that vibe, you can just feel it. And I said, what I wanna do to contribute is I'm not an artist, I'm not an architect, but I can help with the food culture. So that's where EDZ started. And at this point, I started to look at where are these food cultures around here and how were those great cultures started? And I looked to Frank Stitt. Frank Stitt founded the Birmingham food culture that we now know today in the 1980s. It was hard work, determination, and a lot of curiosity. So after seeing that, I thought, what can we do differently here? Because if we're gonna be honest, I was born and raised here. We had country club food, we had meat and three, and I'll tell you today, many of those menus are the exact same they were when I was 9 years old. We were stale and we needed an infusion. Enter my good friend, Rob McDaniel. Rob and I had worked on and off in different capacities. He's a protege of Chris Hastings out of Birmingham, who's the owner of Hot and Hot Fish Club. He, on Lake Martin, is trying to do the same thing we're doing, put energy and enthusiasm behind these types of food events. And I said, Rob, what can we do? We need some young guns that are gonna come in and help stir the scene up. Enter two of my other dear friends in the middle, Chef Leonardo Morelli of Central. He was named the 2012 Chef of the Year for the Alabama Restaurant Association. And to his, is it right or left? Wesley True, who's the executive chef at True, who is a 2-time James Beard Award nominee. That's like the Grammys for chefs. This is a really big deal. So they get here and we start stirring up the scene, but that's not enough. We were sitting there one day with my sister-in-law, who's here, Blake Rosen, the co-founder of Eat Easy, and we were talking to Leo. And Leo is actually from Panama, the country, not Panama City. I make that mistake often. And he said, I really want to cook Panamanian cuisine, but no one in Montgomery will eat it. No one's curious enough, no one will care. And Blake and I sat there and we said, you know, I disagree, I'm curious. There gotta be other people here that are curious too. So we said, you cook the food, we'll get the people, and that was the birth of a little group I like to call Eat Easy. So from then, we've tried to have monthly meetings. We have a group of we have a chef come in, and you get on an email list. The only thing you have to do to get on this email list is have email, and you have to be curious. So from there, we send out who the chef's gonna be, and then we don't tell you anything else. We don't tell you where it's located. We don't tell you what we're gonna have. We are basically telling you to trust us because we want those curious people who really wanna do something different. So we started with that and we've started a movement. It's been this great combination of people that want different things and different types of people. Look at this one. This is a couple of my favorite pictures. To the right is my father, who is a very delightful man and an attorney here in town. He's in his 60s. You'll probably see him out in his coat and suit. And to the left is Jeremy. Many of you might know him as a poet, and he also loves to make coffee. There are different types of situations where you're gonna see these two sitting at a table together. Actually, they're not. It's Eat Easy. That's where you're gonna see them. So by doing that, the curiosity of these people has brought different types of people together. This community is artists, it's architects, it's lawyers, it's lobbyists, it's hairdressers, it's your friend down the street, and I would like to say, John Kahn, thank you for all the beautiful images this evening. But it's turned into something more as well. It's a place for chefs to come out and hone their talents in different venues, and it's also a place for us to give our palettes to them. And so I must say that a lot of people would say, you're crazy. I've never worked in a restaurant. How could you even think that you would be able to pull off one of the most successful restaurant groups, pop-up restaurant groups in the Southeast? And I would say Montgomery, with curiosity and the opportunity that Montgomery has, you're able to do anything, like an Eat Easy.
Made Paper also began from curiosity. I had read over and over again that the newspaper business was dead, the internet killed it. But what I couldn't quite figure out was why local newspapers didn't double down on local. You know the internet's going to provide better political coverage than your local newspaper. You know the internet can provide better foreign coverage than your local newspaper. But the local newspaper is in that community day in and day out. But when you read who's been laid off from newspapers, it's always the experienced local reporters, and that never really made sense to me. So that idea had been kicking around in my head for a while when I went to a couple of events last fall. The first was an oyster roast at the Eat South Urban Farm. We had free beer, Chef Wesley True roasting oysters, live music outside at the downtown farm on a perfect fall evening. And then we had a good number of people there, but we really hadn't reached out beyond our usual supporters. The next night, I went to the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts. They had a fundraiser where they reunited the Dexatines. I'm a Dexatines fan and was extremely excited about the opportunity to see that band here in Montgomery. But when we went out, to the stage, there were only about 150 people. And I couldn't figure out where were the people. These were world-class events, and they were just a little bit underattended. And talking this through, what I realized was the artists knew what was going on with the artists. The musicians knew what was going on with the musicians. The people who loved food and were in the food world knew about the food events, but everyone was in their own silo, and there wasn't a whole lot of communication in between. And MADE was really born out of my desire to connect all of these interesting, talented, creative people who live and work in Montgomery with each other, but also to the community at large. Now, I had written a little bit for a couple of Southern magazines and had an idea of how to do the editorial content, but the layout and design was way over my head. So I got in touch with a couple of our friends, Anna Lauder and Harvey Sahota at Matter Creative, and kind of pitched the idea. And they immediately thought it was wonderful. And as we talked about it, we realized, there is no website everyone in Montgomery goes to find out what's going on. There is no other alternative newspaper that's doing this sort of thing. And the regular news organizations really don't have the ability to drill down and talk about stuff that would probably be too small to cover. And what we realized were the only barriers to our entry were our own time and our own talent. Nothing else stood in our way. And this became an enormous opportunity that we just had to go for. And our motto became, we don't do this, but we're doing it anyways. And I believe that our complete lack of newspaper experience is actually one of our best assets, because we have an idea of how to cover local news in a way that hasn't sort of been spoiled by journalism school or too much training. For instance, Lee Harrison, who's a great local character, he's the owner of Fairview Homebrew. And at Southern Makers last year, Lee was going to give a panel discussion on how to homebrew beer. Unfortunately for Lee, homebrewing beer had not been made legal yet. So when the ABC board found out about this, they sent him a cease and desist letter. And in that cease and desist letter, they not only told him, we will close down your store on Fairview Avenue if you do this, we will shut down the entire Southern Makers event and send everybody home. And I thought to myself, Lee Harrison may very well have the last prohibitionist letter in America. This is a story that we need to tell. So we went out to his store, sat down with a bunch of the other home brewers, and in about an hour, I learned more about brewing beer than I could have learned in a lifetime. And that was a story we needed to tell. Another thing that we do a little differently is, while we have sections that might be familiar to you from other newspapers, like travel, our travel section isn't going to tell you where to go to see touristy things. It isn't going to tell you, what's hot now and throw in a couple of edgy places just to provide local color. The way we handle travel is we ask the people who live there, what would you do on the best day you could have in your town? So recently, Auburn was playing in Los Angeles, Alabama was playing in New Orleans, and we knew that a lot of folks from Montgomery were headed in those directions. So we played a game we called Ask a Local. And we said, what would be the best thing these people coming in from out of town could do? And I think that's really what sets us apart from some of the other papers around. But the real secret to our success is our contributors. And all of this talent in Montgomery, some of it new that's sort of come in to fill that talent gap, some of it old people who've been here since the dark old days when not a whole lot was happening, have come on and become our reporters. We have a political consultant who spent some time in Korea, and he said to me, there are a lot of Korean restaurants in Montgomery, but they can be intimidating if you don't know a whole lot about it. Why don't you let me write a guide to Montgomery's Korean restaurants, and let's see if we can get some folks going to those places. And that article was so well received, we said, hey, do something monthly. And now he's our off-the-beaten-path restaurant columnist, and everything he turns in is magnificent. We have another contributor who works for a child advocacy group, and she's extremely interested in the immigrant experience in Montgomery. She goes to various restaurants that are owned and operated by first-generation immigrants, speaks to them in their own language, and discusses the immigrant experience in Montgomery through the lens of food. Another of our contributors is Montgomery's best cover model. She handles all of our fashion coverage, and who better to tell you how to look your best for the cheapest than someone who's actually a model? But even beyond our talented contributors, equally important is the layout. And Matter Creative are the people who started lofts in downtown Montgomery, put together the A&P project, and have laid out Hampstead. And every time I go to another city, I will seek out their alternative newspapers. And I'll flip through the entire thing, and almost every time I breathe a huge sigh of relief, because we still have the best-looking alternative newspaper in America. Without their help, there's no way we could make this happen. And every month, I pick up the paper, and it looks like it should be a one-off art project, something somebody just did to say, how could you make a newspaper beautiful once? And somehow they manage to top themselves every single month. And our community newspaper has really become a way to develop talent. We have a lot of lawyers and political consultants and accountants who write for us. And these are people who maybe have a talent for writing, but a talent that would have remained hidden had there not been this opportunity to do what we do. But almost as importantly, all of our sort of traditional talented people are covering the non-traditionally talented people, the alternative talent we're also trying to develop. And this creates the sort of connections where you can see a guy in a suit and tie having a drink with someone with a sleeve tattoo and a funny mustache. And in a lot of places, that would never happen. In Montgomery, it happens all the time. And this is a little picture of our community of readers. And these are curious people interested in their hometown who have put their faith and trust in us to tell them stories. And as long as they want to continue to read them, we will continue to print them.
So we are fortunate enough to be asked to be here tonight, but we're not by any means the only people doing this. We are looking out into a sea of people that are doing so many interesting things in Montgomery, and we just want to say, keep going, keep curious, because we're proud to be a part of this movement.
And as we stand here today, this is not our full-time job. This is not something we devote ourselves to all day. So imagine, of all the opportunities that are out there, if you could give your entire energy behind it, what you are capable of. And our being invited here is really proof that in Montgomery, Alabama, there is nothing that's impossible.
So we hope that if you're curious, that you'll keep in touch. Thank you all.